The cathedral glowed in gold and silence. Rows of candles lined the marble aisle like sentinels, their soft flames trembling with every breath the bride took. Somewhere beyond the shimmer of glass and roses, 100 watchful eyes waited for her to falter. Each step she took made her gown whisper against the floor, and that sound, the delicate brush of silk against marble, felt louder than the organ music rising above her fear. Alina kept her chin high, but inside, her pulse drummed panic. The veil blurred her sight, granting her a momentary mercy. She could not see him yet. The man she had agreed to marry, the stranger who carried her family's name in his palm like a weapon. Her fingers clenched the bouquet so tightly that tiny white petals cracked under the pressure. Somewhere in the pews, her father sat, pale and broken, watching the exchange that would save his life and end hers. Then she saw him. Lorenzo De Luca. He stood at the altar like carved ice in human form. Perfectly still, impossibly composed, impossible to read. The light from the stained glass poured across his black suit, catching the gleam of his cufflinks, small, silver, blood red in reflection. His expression did not change when she stopped before him. Not when the priest began the ceremony, not even when she lifted her trembling hand to meet his steady one. Only his eyes shifted, the slightest flicker, a glance sharp enough to slice through air. Whispers rippled through the guests, like gossip trapped in wind. No one believed this was a union of love. Everyone understood it was a spectacle of power. The De Luca family's enemies sat scattered among the pews, pretending to pray, measuring the reach of their rival's dominion. This marriage was not a beginning, it was a warning. Lorenzo's voice broke the silence, not unkind, not gentle, just restrained perfection wrapped in cold command. "Do you take this man?" the priest asked, and before her voice could betray her, Alina whispered, "I do." The sound barely left her lips before his hand tightened around hers. His skin was warm, steady, unyielding. A tremor ran down her spine, not from the pressure, but from the realization that this man, the one she now called husband, didn't see her as a woman at all. She was a transaction, a signature, a piece of leverage carefully delivered to his doorstep. When the rings were exchanged, he slipped the band onto her finger without looking down. A gesture both brutal and elegant. The kiss that followed wasn't a kiss, it was a verdict. His lips brushed hers once, briefly, possessively. Then he turned away as if the act was merely ceremonial, a business clause fulfilled. Applause echoed, hollow and false. As the priest proclaimed them husband and wife, Alina felt the golden cage snap shut. Outside the church, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions about alliances and fortunes, but Lorenzo didn't respond. He escorted her through the arched doorway where his guards stood, black suits forming walls of loyalty. She hesitated one step behind him, watching daylight bend across his shoulders, as if even the sun feared to touch him. He opened the door to the waiting car and looked back once, his tone low, unreadable. "Welcome to your new life, Mrs. De Luca." Then he turned away, the faint scent of smoke and whiskey trailing behind him. As Alina climbed inside, the door closed with a metallic click, a sound too final to be mistaken for safety. The car rolled forward into a world she didn't yet understand, leaving the cathedral behind like a mausoleum of vows. Alina stared at her reflection in the tinted glass. The wedding ring gleamed like a shackle on her hand, and as the city skyline swallowed the horizon, she realized the truth beneath all the whispers. Her fake marriage had just become a contract with the devil himself. The rain had fallen all night, washing the city in silver streaks of guilt. Alina stood in her tiny apartment, staring at the stack of unpaid bills spread across her kitchen table. The ink bled from the water that dripped off her hair. Every envelope carried the same message: final notice, termination, debt settlement pending. Outside her window, the neon light from a nearby bar flickered red like a warning. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She didn't have to look. She already knew who it would be. The collectors. The same men who had haunted her father's steps, who now stalked her life with polite threats disguised as business courtesy. Her father had been a good man once, or at least she still wanted to believe that. But good men didn't borrow money from people who didn't forgive. He had promised her that he'd fix it, that he'd find a way home. Instead, he vanished one night, leaving behind a single envelope, her name written in his trembling hand and the debts tied to it. When the knock came, she thought for a moment it was the landlord. But the silhouette behind the fogged glass was too tall, too deliberate. The man on her doorstep wore an expensive black coat and a look that could silence the room. Behind him, two quiet figures waited, their presence heavy as thunder. Miss Alina Verano? His accent stretched her name, turning it into something rich and foreign. Yes, she whispered, clutching her robe tighter. The man smiled without warmth. I come with an offer, one that will solve all your problems. Those words hovered like poison in perfume. He stepped forward, handed her a card, embossed, immaculate, bearing only a name and an address. DeLuca Holdings. That night, Alina sat at the table, staring at the card under the crooked light bulb. Everyone in the city knew the DeLuca family. They were wealth, power, and danger dressed in velvet. No one dealt with them unless desperate, and she was well beyond desperate. The next morning, she found herself standing before a mansion that seemed to breathe power. The gates opened silently as if expecting her. She entered a room so vast it swallowed her presence entirely. Behind a desk of polished mahogany sat Lorenzo's lawyer, his smile as sharp as the gleam in his cufflinks. "Sign this contract," he said, sliding a folder her way. "Your father's debts will vanish. You'll live comfortably, and in return..." He paused, eyes flickering to her uncertain expression. "You'll stand beside a man for appearances only. No real vows, no love. Just a marriage that will keep him untouchable for 1 year." Alina blinked, breath catching on the edge of a question she couldn't complete. "Who is he?" The lawyer's voice dropped to a whisper, almost reverent. "Lorenzo DeLuca." Every instinct in her screamed to run, yet she didn't. She thought of her father's hollow eyes. She thought of the men outside her door, the bills on the counter, the nights without sleep. And she whispered, "I'll do it." He handed her a pen, the ink gliding across the page with the weight of prophecy. She didn't read the fine print. She didn't notice the small clause that bore her real name, binding her to something more than a deal. When she stepped out of that mansion, she felt the chill of a storm gathering. Somewhere behind one of the darkened windows, she imagined him watching, the man whose name she would soon carry. As the wind tore at her hair, the card still in her hand, she realized the truth too late. She hadn't been offered a lifeline. She had been handed a leash. The first time Alina saw him was not at the altar, but in the shadowed corridor of the DeLuca estate, a space too beautiful to belong to men who made fear their business. She had come for the final meeting, or so the lawyer said. Just sign a few more documents, finalize the arrangement, wear the ring. It was supposed to be simple. Yet every echoing step through those marble halls felt like a descent into something that had no return. The doors to the study opened with a quiet hiss. And there he was. Lorenzo DeLuca rose from behind his desk, the movement unhurried, deliberate. He wore black from head to toe, fit, flawless, alive with quiet authority. No tattoos, no visible scars, no gaudy jewelry like the men her father once owed. Just the understated elegance of someone who didn't need to prove danger. He embodied it, his eyes lifted to her, green and sharp as broken glass, studying her as if calculating the weight of her soul. "So this is her," he said finally, voice low enough to burn in her chest. The man beside him, his advisor, maybe his right hand, nodded slightly. "Alina Verano. She's agreed to the conditions." Lorenzo's gaze didn't shift. "Has she?" The question hung in the air, heavier than stone. Alina swallowed. "Yes," she said, though it came out thinner than she intended. He walked toward her, and the scent of leather and smoke filled the air between them. He wasn't tall in a way that intimidated. He was tall in a way that commanded space, peace, silence. When he stopped barely a breath away, she noticed the silver watch at his wrist, simple but precise, like him. His voice came again, calm, but cutting through her fear with surgical precision. "You understand what you're agreeing to, Miss Verano?" She hesitated. "I do," Lorenzo gave a small nod. "Good. Then let's not pretend this is romance. You're my wife in name, nothing more. You'll attend events. You'll smile when asked. And you'll never ask questions about my business or my past." The final word carried an invisible threat. Alina forced herself to nod. "I just want the debt cleared. My father," he raised one finger. "Your father doesn't exist to me. Only you do, from this moment on." Something flickered behind her ribs, a strange mix of anger and fascination. The arrogance in his tone should have repelled her. Yet there was something magnetic about the control he carried. It wasn't cruelty. It was precision, forged by pain she could almost sense but not see. He turned his back on her then, dismissing her existence as though she were simply another signature on a contract. "You'll move into my residence tomorrow. The ceremony will be kept small. After that, your life belongs to appearances." Alina clenched her hands so tight her nails bit her palms. She wanted to say something, anything. But when she opened her mouth, words refused her. He glanced back once, almost to test whether the silence had broken her yet. It hadn't. Not entirely. At the door, Lorenzo's voice stopped her again. "One more thing," he said, facing the window where the rainfall dripped down the glass. "Whatever stories you've heard about me, believe them." She left the room then, heart hammering against her ribs. The corridor seemed longer now, filled with portraits of men who looked just like him, cold-eyed kings of a world built on silence and ash. Yet her steps carried her forward, as if some invisible thread had already tied her fate to his. Outside, the wind swept the leaves across the courtyard as her driver waited. When the car door closed behind her, she finally exhaled, realizing she hadn't breathed since she met his eyes. Somewhere deep within, trembling through fear and defiance alike, she knew this truth. This was not just a deal. It was a collision course, and she was already falling. The mansion looked different once the vows were spoken. Gone was the ceremonial perfection, replaced by a hollow quiet that crawled through the vast corridors like fog. Alina stood by the window of their bedroom, her reflection caught between candlelight and darkness. A wedding band gleamed on her finger, but it didn't feel like a promise. It felt like a chain. Behind her, the sound of footsteps echoed, measured even, unhurried. Lorenzo entered without word or glance, loosening his tie as he crossed the room. The weight of his silence pressed against her chest, forcing her to swallow her questions. She turned, expecting some gesture of acknowledgement, even if cold or perfunctory. But all she received was distance. "You'll stay in this room," he said finally, his voice controlled, almost detached. "You can decorate it however you want. The West Wing is yours. My office and private quarters are off limits." Alina nodded, unsure how to respond. "And at public events?" "You will smile," he answered simply. "You'll wear what I tell you to. You'll stand on my arm and say nothing that hasn't been rehearsed. People will look at you and see devotion, but when the photographers leave, there will be nothing else. Understand?" It wasn't cruelty in his tone. It was precision. The kind that stripped feeling from words and left only command. She stared at him, searching for any trace of the man who'd spoken his vows hours earlier. But the altar version of Lorenzo had been a role, a ghost made for performance. This was the real man. Silent, unreadable, colder than marble. "What happened to you?" she asked before she could stop herself. He froze mid-step, his back still turned. A long silence followed, stretching taut like a blade about to strike. When he finally spoke, his voice came low and controlled. "There are 3 rules in this marriage, Alina. No touch, no questions, no love." Her breath caught, but he continued, his words ringing with finality. "We play the version the world wants to see. Nothing more." And he walked out, the door closing behind him with the softest click, a sound more suffocating than a slammed door. Days bled into nights. The mansion became a maze of silence. Guards shadowed her movements. Servants bowed but never smiled. Her only company was the sea breeze spilling through the balcony at dusk, carrying the taste of rain and distance. Sometimes she heard music from the lower floor, jazz, steady and haunting. She imagined him there, alone with a glass of whiskey, wearing that detached stillness she was beginning to recognize as loneliness. One afternoon, curiosity broke her obedience. She followed the faint sound of voices until she reached the study. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, Lorenzo stood with two men, discussing shipments and alliances. His tone was quiet but absolute, the kind of command that made even armed men hesitate. When he glanced toward the door, catching her half-hidden silhouette, Alina froze. Their eyes met, and something flickered there. Something hot and dangerous. Not quite anger, not quite warning. "Did I not make myself clear?" he asked later, finding her by the staircase. His voice was calm, but the restraint in it was more frightening than fury. She lifted her chin. "You said no questions, not no curiosity." His expression didn't change. "In my world, curiosity is the same thing." For the first time, she saw a ghost of something human flicker behind his eyes. Pain, maybe regret, but it vanished quickly. "Stay out of things that could bury you," he murmured, almost softly, before turning away again. That night, she couldn't sleep. His words echoed in her mind, blending with the hum of the distant sea. No touch, no questions, no love. Yet under those rules, something restless began to grow, a seed of rebellion, a dangerous kind of fascination. And though she didn't know it yet, Lorenzo De Luca had already broken his own rule. He had started to notice her. The night of the gala arrived like a whisper cloaked in gold. The De Luca estate glimmered with chandeliers and expectation, every corner of the grand ballroom alive with the rustle of silk gowns and measured laughter. Alina stood at the top of the staircase, her heart beating fast beneath a gown Lorenzo had chosen for her, emerald satin that caught the light and drew every eye as though she had stepped out of myth. She had never felt more exposed in her life. Below, Lorenzo commanded the room with silent grace. He moved among senators and syndicate heirs as if he owned their air, their fear, their loyalty. Every glance he threw was deliberate, and every look he ignored was punishment. Yet when his gaze lifted and found hers at the top of the stairs, a hush rippled across the crowd. In that moment, Alina felt the world tilt. He ascended the stairs to meet her. One hand offered, the movement smooth, unhurried. When his fingers brushed her arm, she swore her skin caught fire beneath the touch. The man who had sworn silence now leaned close enough that his breath stirred the curve of her neck. "We smile tonight," he murmured. "Nothing more. Do you understand?" "Yes," she answered, though her pulse betrayed her. They descended together like a royal illusion, the cold, unreadable dawn and his delicate bride. Cameras flashed, questions erupted, but Lorenzo's smile never faltered. His arm held her with practiced possession, not affection. And yet something in the way he guided her through the crowd felt almost protective. Throughout the evening, Alina noticed the changes, the way he deflected certain men from approaching her, the slightly sterner tone when another boss's son lingered too close. When she excused herself to breathe, Lorenzo appeared moments later, glass in hand, eyes unreadable. "You attract attention too easily," he said. Her lips curved faintly. "Isn't that the point of this marriage?" He didn't reply. Instead, he handed her the drink, his fingers grazing hers. It wasn't intentional, at least she didn't think it was. But the touch lingered longer than it should have. Her breath hitched, and his eyes flicked to her throat, silent acknowledgement of the reaction he had caused. A song began, low and slow, the kind that blurred the space between civility and sin. Guests turned to dance. Before she could retreat, Lorenzo's hand found hers again. "They expect us to dance," he said, though there was a softness to his tone that didn't match the logic of obligation. The first chord melted into her bones as he led her to the floor. His hand at her waist was firm, steady, claiming but not invasive. Every step drew them closer, until her body betrayed her restraint. She tilted her head just enough to meet his gaze, and found no trace of the cold executive she knew. For that fleeting minute, he looked almost human. "Tell me something," she said, barely above a whisper. "Do they ever see you smile when the cameras aren't watching?" He exhaled through a faint laugh. Quiet, private, the kind of sound that shouldn't have existed between them. "And give them proof I still bleed?" His hand tightened fractionally, pulling her closer as he spun her out, only to reel her back in. The heat between them changed everything. What began as performance blurred into tension too potent to hide. When the song ended, applause rippled through the room. Somewhere in the back, one of Lorenzo's rivals lifted his glass with mocking applause. Later that night, outside beneath the marble terrace, the air cooled, but the heat within her didn't fade. He leaned close, shadows drifting across his face like secrets refusing rest. "Don't confuse this act for something real," he warned, his breath brushing her ear. But his voice lacked conviction, and she could feel it. The line he had drawn was already starting to break. Their eyes locked, long enough for truth to flicker. A silent war neither wanted to end. He left her standing among roses and moonlight, the scent of danger clinging to her skin. She didn't know if she hated him for making her feel alive, or feared that she didn't hate him at all. In the reflection of the window, she saw what the world couldn't. The first crack in his armor, and the first spark in hers. The estate had grown colder since the night of the gala. Alina noticed it first in the way Lorenzo avoided her gaze. As though he'd allowed himself one moment of humanness too many. His words had turned clipped again, his presence more ghost than man. And yet, even silence could not stop what the dance had awakened. The distance between them was starting to ache. One afternoon, while wandering the West Wing, Alina stumbled upon a door she hadn't seen before. It was slightly ajar, revealing half a room bathed in muted sunlight. Something about the stillness drew her in. A faint scent of perfume lingered in the air, faint but unmistakably feminine. Her footsteps softened as she entered. The room was furnished simply. An elegant dresser, ivory curtains, a piano that looked untouched but recently dusted. On the mantel stood a framed photograph, half hidden behind a crystal clock. She reached for it, curiosity pricking through restraint. The picture showed a woman, flawless and familiar. Her hair the same dark shade, her features sharp yet soft. A reflection so uncanny that Alina's stomach tightened. It could have been her reflection if not for the date inscribed beneath it, 5 years ago. Behind her, the door creaked. She turned sharply, the photograph clutched to her chest as Lorenzo stood in the threshold. His expression gave away nothing, but tension carved through the air like wire. "What are you doing here?" His tone was low, dangerous not because it was loud, but because it wasn't. "I was walking," she stammered. "I didn't know this room." "It's not yours," he cut in, stepping forward. "No one enters this room." The words landed like shards. Alina placed the frame back carefully, her hands trembling.
"Who is she?" He froze.
The air stilled. His jaw tightened as if her question scraped at a scar that had never healed. "She was my fiancée." The words came hard, restrained. "She died." Alina blinked. "And she looked like me." His eyes met hers briefly, the fire beneath the ice flickering with something raw. "That's enough. But that's why you chose me, isn't it?" She pressed, the tremor returning to her voice. "Because I look like her." He turned his back then, heading toward the window. Light cut across his silhouette, painting sharp angles over the surface of his control. "You shouldn't confuse coincidence with significance." "You don't believe in coincidence," she said quietly. When he spun back to face her, the facade cracked for the briefest second. Grief, guilt, rage, then gone, replaced by the man the world saw, a ruler armored in calm. "She was taken from me," he said finally, "by people who thought they could break me. So I became someone they couldn't hurt." Alina's breath caught. "And I'm what, your mirror? Your second chance?" His stare hardened. "You're a mistake I thought I could control." The words struck her deeper than they should have. She turned to leave, but before she reached the door, his voice came again, softer this time. "Don't come here again, Alina. The dead have sharper memories than you think." That night, in her room, she tried to forget the photo, the resemblance. The way his voice trembled when he said the word fiancé, she couldn't. Instead, she found herself staring at her own reflection, wondering if she was living in another woman's shadow, or if she'd already become it. Down the hall, Lorenzo stood alone in that forbidden room. The photograph sat where she'd placed it, slightly tilted. He adjusted it carefully, his fingers lingering over the glass before withdrawing. Outside, Thunder rolled in the distance as though warning them both that ghosts seldom rest when lies awake are stronger than the truth. The dinner invitation arrived with embossed lettering and an unspoken warning. Lorenzo's advisor delivered it in silence, placing it before Alina on a silver tray. "A business gathering," he said, though his tone suggested the opposite. "You and the Don are expected to attend together." She glanced at Lorenzo across the study. He continued reading a document, his jaw tight as ever. "It's a meeting," he said, never looking up. "Not a negotiation." But when evening came, and they arrived at the restaurant reserved entirely for their party, Alina realized meetings in the criminal world felt more like battlegrounds beautifully disguised by linen and wine. The guests were powerful men wearing civility like perfume, rival families, allies pretending not to be enemies. The head of the Romano syndicate smiled too easily, his charm slick with threat. At his side sat his son, the same man who had laughed too long at the gala when Lorenzo wasn't looking. Now his eyes lingered on Alina again. "Mrs. DeLuca," he greeted with a smirk. "You grow more radiant by the week." "Lorenzo, my friend, your taste has improved." The table went still in an instant. Alina felt the temperature drop even before Lorenzo moved. He didn't speak, didn't raise his voice. He merely looked at the man. The quiet that followed was sharper than any blade. Then, with the faintest curve of his lips, Lorenzo spoke. "Careful, Marco. Compliments can sound like claims." Laughter erupted around the table, forced and nervous. Marco's grin faltered only slightly. Throughout the dinner, Alina played her part, the dutiful wife, elegant and wordless. Yet beneath the surface, she could sense the tension building, disguised by small talk about trade routes and partnerships. There was something more going on, a power balance shifting under the cover of civility. Wine was poured. The waiters withdrew. What remained was business cloaked in charm. Romano leaned forward. "The DeLuca name carries weight, but times are changing. You've cut off a few of your oldest partners. Some say you've gone soft." Lorenzo's knife sliced through his steak without hesitation. "Some say too much when they've outlived their usefulness." His tone was mild. His eyes were not. Romano chuckled, though his knuckles whitened around his glass. "We'll see if that confidence lasts." Alina shifted, sensing something inside him tighten. His control was perfect, but his stillness screamed danger. She reached subtly under the table, placing her fingers against his wrist. Not to stop him, but to remind him he wasn't alone. His pulse was steady, unflinching, but the glance he gave her was brief, disarming, like a shadow of something that shouldn't exist between them. Moments later, the restaurant doors swung open. A gunshot split the air. The crystal chandelier trembled as chaos erupted. Guards moved instantly, shielding their masters. Lorenzo pulled Alina close, his arm wrapping around her shoulders, pressing her against the wall as bullets shattered glass. When the noise fell away, only silence and smoke remained. Romano's man lay slumped across the table, an unsent message still visible on his phone. It had been a setup, an ambush disguised as hospitality. Lorenzo's voice cut through the haze. Calm, commanding, lethal. "Get her out," but Alina refused. "I'm not leaving without you." He turned then, meeting her eyes fully for the first time since the photograph. There was no mask now, no coldness, only the raw, unguarded truth of a man who had seen death too often. "You should," he said. "When you stand too close to me, people start aiming higher." She didn't move, and something in her defiance softened him, though only for a second. When they finally exited, the night wind hit sharp and cold. The city lights blinked like witnesses that would never speak. Alina climbed into the car, her hands trembling around his coat still draped over her shoulders. In the silence that followed, she turned to him. "You saved me," she said quietly. Lorenzo's jaw clenched. "No, I protected what's mine." It sounded like possession. It felt like confession. Neither dared to call it what it truly was. Fear of losing the one person who shouldn't have mattered. The car drove on, the world outside blurring, and Alina realized something terrifying. Danger no longer only surrounded them. It bound them. Rain fell like shattered glass against the windows, the sound constant and unforgiving. The DeLuca estate, always immaculate and cold, now felt alive with electricity, charged by something that neither of them could suppress any longer. Lorenzo had ordered every guard positioned along the gates after the ambush, yet the true storm wasn't outside. It was in the silence between him and Alina. They hadn't spoken since returning from the restaurant. Alina sat by the fire, the flames painting her skin in shades of gold and shadow. Lorenzo stood near the window, one hand gripping the edge of the curtains, watching raindrops slide down the glass like seconds of patience ticking away. "You shouldn't have stayed," he said finally. His tone was even, yet something frayed beneath the composure. "I couldn't watch you die," she replied, voice soft but steady. "Not for me." He laughed once, short and hollow. "You don't understand my world. Death is part of the language we speak." "Then teach me," she said, rising to her feet. He turned at that, slowly, as though unsure whether she was brave or foolish. The distance between them shrank until the heat of the fire fused with the heat of their breath. Alina met his gaze without flinching. "You keep telling me not to ask, not to feel," she whispered. "But you forget I already do." His eyes darkened, the control that defined him faltering at last. "Alina," he warned, like saying her name would stop the inevitable. But instead of retreating, she stepped closer, her fingertips barely touching his chest. The contact undid him more than any enemy's gun. "I see you," she said. "The man who lost something and built ice around the wound. The man who pretends vengeance is enough." Lorenzo's hand caught her wrist, gentle but firm. "Careful," he murmured. "You think you want to see me, but I promise you don't." "I already do." The answer left her lips like a confession. Lightning flashed outside. The thunder's echo filled the hollow space where fear used to live. He took a single step forward, closing the last space between them. His hand traced the line of her jaw, skimming just close enough to set every nerve alight. "This wasn't supposed to happen," he said, voice breaking its calm. "Neither was I," she replied. And then the silence shattered. He kissed her like a man erasing boundaries, his restraint unraveling into something desperate and real. The world narrowed to the press of skin, the taste of rain still clinging to her lips, the pulse beneath her fingertips. For the first time, his touch wasn't cold. It burned, fierce and unrelenting. She matched him, her hands sliding around his neck, pulling him closer until the distance that had defined them dissolved entirely. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't practiced. It was truth, raw and dangerous and alive. When the fire dimmed and their breath steadied, Lorenzo leaned his forehead against hers. "You should hate me for this," he said, his voice rougher now, stripped of command. "I've tried," she whispered. "It doesn't work." They stayed locked like that, neither daring to move, both knowing that something irreversible had begun. But dawn crept too soon. The rain stopped. The fire burned low, and the cold began to return. Reality slipped back into the quiet like an old enemy waiting to reclaim its territory. Lorenzo pulled away first, eyes shadowed again. "This changes nothing," he said. Alina gave a faint, sorrowful smile. "Then why do you look like it changed everything?" He didn't answer. He gathered his jacket, his hands shaking just slightly, and walked out without another word. When the door closed behind him, Alina sat back by the fire, the sound of the rain fading into silence. She touched her lips, not sure if they still belonged to her. Somewhere in the mansion, the sea wind howled through open hallways, carrying with it the echo of a truth neither of them could ever undo. The morning sunlight filtered through half-drawn curtains, slipping over the rumpled sheets where Alina still felt the ghost of his touch. For the first time since the vows, she had slept without fear, and for the last time, she realized later that she would. Lorenzo was gone before dawn. His side of the bed was cold, the imprint of his presence vanishing as quickly as his promises. Downstairs, silence coated the mansion like frost. The servants avoided her eyes, their movements mechanical, deliberate. Something had shifted, a tension under the air she couldn't yet name. A knock broke the quiet. Lorenzo's lawyer stepped into the room, his face unreadable. Mrs. DeLuca, he greeted, the words clipped, formal. The Don asked me to bring you a few documents for your records. She frowned. What documents? Your marriage license, the official copy, signed and filed 3 days ago. He placed the folder before her, then hesitated, as if pity warred with loyalty. I'd suggest reading carefully before asking questions. When she opened the file, the blood drained from her face. Her own signature stared back at her, beneath the DeLuca crest, sealed and notarized. But the name on the papers wasn't an alias. It was her full legal name, no pretense, no false identity. The marriage was real. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She flipped through page after page, witnesses, dates, hidden clauses she'd overlooked. Her hand trembled over the final line, written in Lorenzo's immaculate, unbreakable script. Marriage to last until dissolution by death or decree. Her throat tightened. He told me it was fake, she whispered. The lawyer gave a faint shrug. Our Don doesn't lie, Mrs. DeLuca. He omits. By the time Lorenzo returned, the sun had dipped behind clouds. Alina stood in the center of his office, the papers spread across his desk like evidence of betrayal. You used me, she said, her voice steady despite the tremor underneath. You married me for real. Lorenzo didn't flinch. He closed the door behind him, removing his gloves with quiet precision. You sound surprised. You told me this was an arrangement, a performance. It was. And now? She pressed, fury seeping into her words. Now I'm your prisoner? He stepped closer, each movement deliberate, controlled. No, Alina, you're my protection. You're the reason my enemies hesitate. The only thing they won't destroy is what the law recognizes as mine. Her eyes burned. You think possession is love. You think control means safety. You're wrong. Safety, he said, voice low, is never wrong. You would be dead without me. Tears threatened, but she refused to let them fall. You didn't save me. You buried me under your name. That hit him. For a moment, the facade cracked, his expression tightening with guilt that looked like someone else's wound. But just as quickly, he masked it again. This isn't about you, he said. It never was. Alina slapped the papers across the desk, the sound breaking the stillness. Then what was I? A strategy? A body to replace the one you lost? His jaw clenched and silence stretched. Finally, he said it, quietly but without defense. She died because of me. And when I saw you, I thought maybe I could rewrite the ending. Her breath hitched. So I was meant to die too? No, he said, the single word torn from somewhere raw. You weren't supposed to matter. The confession landed like a strike. Half truth, half surrender. Alina turned away before he could see her crumble. Congratulations, Lorenzo. You've created another ghost. She walked toward the door, but his hand caught her wrist. Alina, don't, she said, yanking free. You promised me no love. I'm finally holding you to it. She left him standing there, alone among the papers that had forged her chains. Lorenzo stared at the ring on his finger, the same one he'd slipped onto hers, realizing too late that he'd bound himself as tightly as he had her. Outside, she climbed into the waiting car without a backward glance. The rain began falling again, same as the night they first touched, but now it sounded less like fire and more like grief. The days after her departure blurred into quiet fury. Alina had left the DeLuca mansion, but the man's world followed her everywhere. Bodyguards shadowed her steps, his influence securing invisible walls she couldn't escape. And yet, it was within those walls that she began to change. For the first time, she looked at herself in the mirror and didn't see a fragile pawn. She saw the echoes of a woman Lorenzo feared she might become, independent, unpredictable, and calculating. He had trapped her with legality and control, but he hadn't foreseen what confinement could breed. Resolve. She started observing everything. She learned how his empire functioned, the delicate choreography of money and loyalty that kept the DeLuca name untouchable. The same network that served him became her education. Late at night, she sat by the window of her penthouse suite, scrolling through encrypted files discreetly retrieved from his office before she left. Passwords Lorenzo never assumed she'd be bold enough to memorize. Names and numbers told a story darker than she imagined. Alliances, accounts, and betrayals disguised as deals. She read everything, She learned who feared him and who wanted him dead. When Lorenzo finally appeared at her door one evening, she was ready. He looked exhausted, his tie loosened, hair damp from the rain. He didn't ask permission to enter. He never had to. The apartment filled with his presence, an unsettling mix of cold and something unspoken, almost regret. "We need to talk," he said. She folded her arms. "About my freedom or your guilt?" His jaw flicked. "About safety. There's movement from the Romano syndicate again. They saw your departure as weakness." "Maybe it is," she said coolly. "Or maybe it's strategy." Lorenzo frowned, just long enough for her to see the unease flash through his eyes. "You think you can play this game alone?" Alina turned away, opening her laptop with quiet defiance. "I already am." She spun the screen toward him. The image displayed was one of his offshore accounts, traced back to a shell company linked to a senator he didn't trust. "You thought I wasn't watching? You were wrong." For a moment, he looked stunned, not in anger, but in reluctant admiration. "You went through my files." "I went through my husband's empire," she corrected. "If it has my name on it, it's mine too." He stepped closer, the air tightening. "You're walking in a minefield." "I grew up in one," she said softly. "I just stopped pretending I didn't." Something new flickered between them then. Not tenderness, not even reconciliation. Respect. Dangerous, mutual respect. The kind reserved for equals in a war neither could afford to lose. When she handed him a folder of her own creation, he hesitated before taking it. "What's this?" "Every traceable tie between the Romanos and your company. Names, transfers, half your board is compromised. You can't touch them without cause, but I can." He tilted his head, studying her. "You're suggesting an internal strike." "I'm suggesting we finish what you started," she said. "On my terms this time." The silence that followed was thick with unspoken history. The kiss, the betrayal, the truth that had torn them apart. Lorenzo's expression softened for the first time in days. "You surprise me," he murmured. Alina smiled faintly. "You created me." He looked at her for a long moment, as if realizing the full consequence of that statement. Then, quieter still, he said, "No, Alina, I only sharpened you." That night, they worked together. Maps, files, encrypted calls, two forces once opposed, aligned by necessity and something deeper neither dared define. When dawn came, Alina glanced at him across the desk, exhaustion mixing with adrenaline. Lorenzo noticed it too. "You should rest," he said. "So should you," she replied. "And miss the sight of you taking my throne one piece at a time?" She didn't smile, but her voice dropped low. "Maybe that's the point." He said nothing, but the faintest trace of pride curved his lips. For once, she wasn't his pawn. She was his equal. And somewhere, hidden beneath the layers of schemes and danger, they both knew it was the most dangerous transformation of all. The night began with the taste of victory and ended in blood. Alina and Lorenzo had spent weeks unraveling the corruption that wormed through his empire. Every sealed document she found, every hidden betrayal exposed, pulled them closer together until war felt like an extension of their attraction. But no victory in his world came unpunished. The warning came through a coded message minutes before midnight. Romano's men knew. They were coming. By the time Lorenzo's guards locked the estate down, the air had shifted, charged, tense, final. Alina watched him move through the room, giving orders with quiet precision, his every gesture radiating power and control. But beneath it, she sensed the truth he'd never voice: fear, not for himself, but for her. "Go to the East Wing," he told her, slipping a gun into her hand. "Don't argue. You know what to do," she shook her head. "You're not facing them alone." His eyes softened, just enough to break through the armor. "This isn't bravery, Alina. It's suicide. Then we die together." Before he could protest, the sound of gunfire tore through the glass walls. The first impact shattered the chandelier above them. Guards shouted. Chaos crashed through luxury. Lorenzo grabbed her arm, pulling her down behind the marble counter as bullets sliced through the air. "You planned for this," she said through ragged breaths. I planned for everything, except you." He leaned out, firing once, twice, dropping 2 men who burst through the front doors. Smoke filled the hallway, and for a moment she lost him in the haze. When she found him again, he was standing in the open, exposed and furious, exchanging shots with shadows that kept multiplying. "Lorenzo!" she screamed, but the sound drowned beneath the chaos. By the time she reached him, a sharp blast cracked through the night. The recoil of her scream met the echo of the gunshot. Lorenzo staggered back, his hand pressed to his chest where crimson bloomed through his shirt. Alina caught him before he fell, the gun slipping from his grip. His blood smeared her hands, warm and terrifying. "No, no," she murmured, pressing her trembling palms to the wound. "Stay with me." He looked at her the way he had on the night they first met. Unreadable, stunning, impossibly calm. "I told you, standing near me has consequences. Don't you dare talk like that," she said, voice breaking. "You don't get to save me and die in the same breath." He brushed his fingers over her cheek, his touch light and ghost-like. "Everything I built was to protect what I had left, and somehow you became that." Tears spilled freely now. She could barely see his face through them. "Please, Lorenzo, there's still time. Just hold on." His breathing faltered, but his eyes never left hers. "You once asked what happened to me," he whispered. "You did." And with that, his eyes closed. The noise outside faded, replaced by sirens and footsteps. Guards hauled the last attackers away, voices shouting his name, calling for medics, for help. But Alina barely heard them. She stayed kneeling beside him, cradling his limp form as dawn crept across the sky. By the time the medics arrived, she was silent. Her gown was soaked in blood, her face expressionless, her world fractured down the middle. Hours later, when the chaos subsided and the mansion was wrapped in police tape and broken glass, Alina wandered into his office alone. The clock ticked like a heartbeat, unrelenting. She sank into his chair, numb, as files scattered across the table glared back at her, his empire waiting for its master to rise again. In the drawer beside her hand lay his signet ring. She picked it up slowly, the metal still warm, and closed her fist around it. If Lorenzo De Luca's love had been punishment, his legacy would be revenge. And she, the woman he bound by accident and awakened by intent, would carry it until the world trembled at her name. Weeks passed, but time never softened the echo of that night. The De Luca estate remained locked in half-darkness, a kingdom stripped of its king. Alina stood before the mirror of the same grand bedroom where her story with Lorenzo had begun. She wore black now, an unspoken crown of mourning and survival. The ring he had given her, once heavy with resentment, now gleamed like a vow. They said Lorenzo De Luca was dead. The papers declared it. The rivals rejoiced. But death had never meant absence in his world. It meant rumor, power, myth. And in the vacuum he left behind, Alina rose. The city learned fast. Those who had once dismissed her as a pawn now spoke her name with caution. She stepped into meetings Lorenzo once ruled, her words threaded with the same calm precision he had used to command loyalty. She didn't need to threaten. Silence did it for her. The widow of a Mafia king was more terrifying than the man himself, because she had nothing left to lose. One evening, the compound's chapel stood lit by hundreds of candles. The air smelled of wax and memory. Alina knelt before the altar, palms resting atop Lorenzo's signet ring. "Till death do us part," she murmured. "You never told me whose death you meant." Behind her, footsteps stirred. Marco Romano's voice carried through the echoing chamber, smooth, taunting. Touching, really. The grieving queen holding onto the crown of a ghost. Alina rose slowly, her calm a blade hidden beneath velvet. "You came here uninvited." "Because your husband isn't here to stop me," he said, stepping closer. "His empire belongs to those strong enough to take it. And I've come to collect." She moved to face him fully, the faint light catching the tears she didn't let fall. "And I've come to bury the last of his enemies." The silence that followed was brief and fatal. When it broke, it was with the click of a pistol. A single shot. Marco stumbled backward, his surprise freezing on his face before collapsing at her feet. Alina lowered the gun, her expression unreadable. "Long live the DeLuca name," she whispered. By dawn, word spread across the city. The Romano family had fallen. The DeLuca Empire had a new ruler. That evening, Alina returned to the balcony overlooking the sea. The horizon burned orange, the same color as the firelight that once danced over his skin. She placed his ring on her thumb, knowing she would never take it off. A wind brushed against her hair, carrying the scent of smoke and whiskey, the same one that used to follow him. She turned toward the empty doorway, her pulse stuttering. In the shadows stood a silhouette, broad shoulders, familiar stance. He stepped into the faint light, alive, eyes burning with something even more dangerous than love. Lorenzo. The world stilled. He was paler, thinner, but unmistakably alive. "Did you miss me, wife?" he murmured, voice rough with both question and warning. She didn't move, didn't breathe. The weight of their history pressed between them, thick as silence, alive as fire. "You let them think you were dead," she whispered. "I had to see what you'd become when you stopped needing me." Her eyes glistened, but her voice held steady. "And what do you see now?" He stepped closer until the air between them trembled. "A queen I created, and one I'll never control again." The words lingered between them, neither curse nor promise. Something more dangerous than both. Beyond them, the clock struck midnight. The candles flickered. The world rebuilt its breath. And as her hand reached toward his, the camera of fate would have frozen on that image. The blood oath bride standing beside the resurrected king, between ruin and redemption, ready to start the war all over again. The city never truly slept, but now it bowed in silence. From the balcony of the DeLuca Tower, Alina watched the streets pulse with cold light, the empire she had rebuilt from blood and ashes thriving under her command. They called her La Signora Nera, the Black Lady. Behind her, she heard the low hum of his voice. "You've made them fear you." Lorenzo leaned against the doorway, wearing the same black suit he'd been buried in. His resurrection now whispered through every corner of the underworld. Alina turned, her fingers tracing the rim of a glass of red wine. "You taught me that fear lasts longer than loyalty." He smiled faintly. "And love, where does that fit?" Her eyes met his. "Love is the most efficient weapon." Lorenzo crossed the room slowly, stopping just close enough to let tension breathe between them. "Then tell me," he murmured, "are we allies or adversaries now?" The corner of her lips curved, the kind of smile that promised both ruin and devotion. "Until one of us wins." Thunder rolled in the distance. Somewhere below, a car exploded, another message in their endless game. Neither flinched. Lorenzo lifted her hand, pressing a slow kiss to her ring. "Then let the next war begin, Mrs. DeLuca." She leaned closer, whispering against his ear, "It already has." Outside, sirens wailed across the night as rain began to fall again, washing over a city that would soon learn that death had never ended their story. It had only crowned them king and queen of chaos,